Both IPv4 and IPv6 have private IP addresses. In IPv6, we call those unique local addresses, or ULAs. In this video, you'll learn about the basics, but private addresses are very popular in IPv4, and they're not so popular with IPv6. We'll talk about why that is as well. Let's jump in. As always, I'm following along with the outline of the books, so I've got a chapter that covers Global Unicast Addressing and Unique Local Addressing. It's in the last part of the Volume 1 book in the current editions. So this video is about unique local addresses. So in the first of the 3 sections of this video then, I'll talk about unique local address concepts, including why it is that these private ULAs are not very popular in IPv6, and it's mainly because the GUAs are so effective with IPv6. But then we'll get into the details of ULAs, like the structure of the addresses, ULA prefixes, and the ULA addresses themselves. As always, stick around to the end of the video and I'll give you some study and review advice, how to study the topic both here at the channel and in the books. This is the end of a chapter, so we'll have chapter review comments there, and then how to navigate the full course to get into the next content after this one. All right, let's get rolling. First, we'll talk about some of the big concepts. So let's set the stage for context. So unicast addresses include GUAs, which we talked about in the previous video, ULAs, which we're talking about now, and then a special type called link local addresses that we'll talk about in the next chapter. So unicast being an address that's meant to represent one device or interface. So you've got a PC, it's got an Ethernet adapter, it would have an IPv6 ULA, for instance, to represent that interface as it's connected to the network for IPv6 packets, all right? Then there are multicast addresses, and these are fairly popular inside IPv6, more so than IPv4. So there are a couple of names for different types of multicast addresses in IPv6. And 2 are special purpose for the purposes of protocols to accomplish their goals. There are solicited node multicast addresses and predefined well-known multicast addresses, again, for protocols to do their jobs. Then there's a general purpose type of multicast address. And we're going to defer those for the next chapter as well. All right. But here, we're going to talk about this idea of unique local addresses, which are basically private IP addresses for IP version 6. So let's just say you had an isolated network. That is, you're never going to connect it to the internet. So this is your enterprise, this is your company, this is your government organization. You want to be firewalled off from the internet totally, no communications into or out of the internet. So you could choose to use these private addresses, these ULAs, spread out through your network. So I don't show any of the actual addresses. I'm just telling you we're using ULAs. That would be a perfectly appropriate and proper use of ULAs. Alternately, you could do the following. You could indeed connect your network to the internet and use ULAs for all the addresses inside your company or organization. And then you could use a traditional model like we do in IP version 4, where you use NAT. And then you have some public addresses. So here with IPv6, you need to start thinking about GUAs, Global Unicast Address, as public, and ULAs as private, all right? ULAs private, GUAs public. So just like with IPv4, where you'd had private addresses in your company and need a small set of public addresses, likewise, private addresses in your company and a small set of public addresses. Now, it turns out with IPv6, this is so unpopular that while there is support for NAT, for IPv6 to IPv6, as I'm showing here, it's not even standardized, all right? Vendors support it, but there's no RFC to define it because it's so unpopular. Why is that? Well, it turns out GUAs are very successful. Instead of this, just get a GUA prefix and assign GUA addresses all throughout your enterprise and ignore ULAs altogether, ignore the need for NAT or a similar feature called prefix translation that accomplishes some of the same benefits. And you can ignore these private addresses, all right? So that's why I say ULAs are fairly unpopular. People just eschew this idea of going through all this translation stuff and use GUAs, all right? But when to use ULAs? Well, back to that isolated case, or very rarely somebody might use ULAs and do NAT, just so you're aware that that's when you might come across it. So let's talk a little more about the addresses themselves. So we call them ULAs, and the full name is Unique Local Addresses. And they're similar to IPv4 Private Addresses. They're not routable over the internet. That is, a packet that has a EULA address in it, routers in the internet should filter them out. They should not forward them, all right? So in order to send packets into the internet, if you're using EULAs inside your enterprise, you need NAT, or that prefix translation that I just mentioned, and you need a block of GUAs to use to do that translation, all right? Which is one of the motivations for just saying, forget about it, I'm going to use GUAs and not mess with that, all right? However, they aren't identical in concept to private addresses in IPv4. For instance, there is no RFC that gives you a block of private addresses. In IPv4, there is. It's RFC 1918. For instance, network 10 in IPv4 is a private network. There's no such equivalent in IPv6. Instead, there's a process you go through to create a hopefully unique in the universe prefix for your EULA addresses, which is one of the things that makes it kind of interesting. And those prefixes start with foxdog, and that's what we'll talk about next. So formally, per the RFC that defines this, all EULAs begin with this. So what does that mean? Well, this prefix length of /7 means all numbers whose first 7 bits are the same first 7 bits as Fox Charlie 00 : all right? And the ::, of course, represents a bunch of quartets of all zeros. So what is that in binary? What are these first 7 bits? Well, Fox Charlie here, converted to binary, is 1111 1100, and you can figure that out by looking at Fox and Charlie in this binary to hex conversion chart over here. So Fox Charlie, any addresses you see that begin with Fox Charlie, those are EULAs, but also Fox Dog, because Fox Dog, the first 7 bits are also 1111 110. The 8th bit happens to be a 1, but this /7 means all whose first 7 bits match this number. And so to net it out in a more familiar human phrasing, it's all addresses that begin with Fox Charlie or Fox Dog. All right. Now, if we stop there, that would be okay, but there's one little twist to it. In the same RFC that defines this Fox Charlie 00 : /7 as the prefix for EULA, it also says, oh, by the way, the 8th bit must also be a 1. All right, so that's an additional detail. So if you look at Fox Charlie, the 8th bit is not a 1. So basically they're saying, well, after all that, we're going to rule out the ones that begin with Fox Charlie. Fox Dog does begin with an 8th bit that's 1. So in practice, in more familiar terminology, the EULAs that you're allowed to use are the addresses that begin with Fox Dog alone. And another way to write that is foxdog 00 : /8, meaning the first 8 bits are the same as this number. But more easily, all that begin with Fox Dog are EULAs. Did you know that using the CCNA course playlist actually helps me here at the channel? That's right. It signals to YouTube that you love the channel and that you're committed to it. And by the way, it helps you navigate all this CCNA content as well. So use the QR code or the direct link, bookmark the link, and start there every time you come back to the channel. That's a way to help me and to help you too. All right, back to the video. So with EULA addresses, you start out by doing a random number generation. And the idea is to create a value that's 40 bits long or 10 hex digit long to use in all your EULA addresses. And we call that the global ID. And the word global comes up because we want it to be globally unique. So the idea of using this random number generator is that you don't register your global ID with some centralized authority, but at least you randomly generate it. And because it's 40 bits long, there are 2 to the 40th possible values, or over 1 trillion different values. And if every company that uses EULAs randomly generates a value out of a possible trillion or so, chances are you're going to have a unique value, all right? And the goal of having unique values is that if 2 companies ever merge, it'd be nice if they were using different EULAs if they both happen to be using EULAs, all right? So you have a global ID that's part of your address, but here it's just hanging out in space. Where is it? Well, we know addresses begin with Fox Dog, and that's the first 8 bits or 2 hex digits worth. And the global ID follows right after that. It's the next 40 bits or 10 hex digits, which gets us up to the 48-bit mark in our address structure, right? So all the addresses in your enterprise that uses ULAs will use that same value. And then for the next 16 bits or 4 hex digits, you have a subnet field. That's where you pick unique values to identify different subnets. And of course, it's at the 64-bit mark because a lot of RFCs tell us that you want all your subnets to have a 64-bit prefix length because that works well with lots of other features, all right? So we follow that convention here. So the last 64 bits, last half of the address, is the interface ID. So there's your EULA address structure. For example, if one company came up with a global ID of 12 Cafe Beef, as you see here, the addresses begin with Fox Dog, be followed by 4 hex digits of subnet, and the second half of the address is the interface ID. Another company may have come up with 78 9 Baker Chicken 1234 for the global ID, and a third company some third value for the global ID. But all the addresses inside each company would have the same value. For instance, if we had a company that uses this 12 Cafe Beef value for its global ID, all its addresses would begin Fox Dog with that value in the first 48 bits or 12 hex digits. Then for each subnet, for instance, the first subnet, maybe the subnet number is 1111, and the next subnet, the subnet number is 2222, the next subnet number 0303, and so on. And that's how you would pick numbers to identify different subnets inside the network. Then, what are the subnet IDs or the prefix IDs that you would expect to see in the routing table? Well, it's those same values, but with all zeros for the interface ID. So to make the prefix ID, just like we did with GUAs, just make the interface ID value be all zeros. So there's the first and the second and the third from those same 3 examples that we saw a few moments ago. All right, so just to bring it home with a simple network diagram, every place you've got a VLAN or a WAN link, you would probably want to then have an IPv6 subnet. So here are some of the ones we saw on the previous page and some others like Subnet 1, Subnet 2, Subnet 3, and so on. But notice they all begin with Fox Dog, so they're EULAs, and then that same global ID, 12 Cafe Beef in this case, all throughout, and even Subnet 7, 8s, and 9s, if you will, on the 3 WAN links. Now, those are EULAs inside the enterprise. If you did happen to connect to the internet, you would need some GUAs. So you'd have to go through the normal registration process and be allocated some GUAs. Maybe it's this GUA prefix, and then maybe use IPv6 NAT to translate from your EULAs to your GUAs as the packets go from inside your enterprise over to the internet. Or you reach this point in your planning and you say, forget about these EULAs. Let's just use this GUA prefix and use those addresses out here to the left and be done with it. To close this video, I want to go over a few obvious facts and then make a recommendation to you about EULA addresses. All right, so let me just show you a few examples. Addresses will all have non-zero values in the interface ID, like this one that's mostly zeros but a 1, mostly zeros but a 2, or this one that has only a few zeros and a bunch of other hex digits in there. As long as they're unique in the subnet, you're good to go. And by the way, when a device connects to the subnet every time, it goes through a process called duplicate address detection to make sure that the address it's using is indeed unique in that subnet, so it doesn't reuse the same address and cause troubles. All right, so just use a unique non-zero interface ID and you're good to go. So your process to pick an address to use is you take the prefix ID, which does have an all zeros interface ID field, and just pick any unused 16 hex digit value, which, should be pretty easy to accomplish. Now, the practical part of this is that your router interface IPv6 addresses are numbers that you typically choose and configure as static values. For instance, you may pick these values with lots of non-zero hex digits, and I would call those long interface IDs, and they work just fine. But I wouldn't pick those because they're just harder to work with. Wouldn't you rather have these nice short interface IDs? These, if you were to expand the addresses, are 15 zeros and a 1, 15 zeros and a 1, 15 zeros and a 3, 15 zeros and a 3. Notice router R1 and router R3. There's even some coding of the router number in those addresses. All right, so you could come up with a numbering plan to identify the device even. So if you had a mostly zeros interface ID with lots of ability to abbreviate, it would just make your life a lot simpler when you're operating the network. So I encourage you to come up with a good numbering plan for your interface IDs and make it easier on the entire staff. All right, study group, what do you do to study this topic now that you're done to the end of the video? Well, on this topic in particular, just a brief recap, ULAs are similar to private addresses in IPv4, but not identical. The addresses themselves begin with Fox Dog and then have a 10-digit randomly chosen value called the Global ID. And then the next 4 hex digits, the 4th quartet, that's where you'd find the Subnet ID. And we use them like private addresses in IPv6. Now, if you want to practice with this, there's an ad hoc lab that is a lab self-contained in a video. So there's a link to it in the description to this video. And in all these ad hoc labs, you watch a bit of the video and it tells you what to do. Then you hit pause and you do the lab. And then the second part of the video runs through the lab with you so you can get a little deeper look at what you should have seen during the lab. So definitely you want to take advantage of that. Another review activity, because we're at the end of a chapter with lots and lots of terminology in it, is a terminology mind map that covers the entire chapter's terms. So that is terms about GUAs and terms about ULAs, basically. So you'd want to think about the previous instructional video plus this instructional video. And the seed term is IPv6 address. So anything you can think of having to do with IPv6 addresses, this is a good place to review it. Then, if you've got the books and you want to use those in your review, you definitely can take advantage of the in-chapter exercises. There's one on ULAs in there. As far as do you need to read that section in the chapter, I'd say you could skim it. That would be a reasonable use of the content there. And really the bar you want to ask yourself, can you do this, to self-assess is, can you build ULAs for a small lab without notes? If I said, get out a blank piece of paper and a pen and draw a small topology like you might build in lab and make up some ULAs for that. Use your brain as your random number generator for the global ID. Could you build out ULAs for that lab? All right, so that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. So think about that for yourself. Now, this is the last section of the chapter. So thinking about chapter review, we've just got this EULA video we just finished and the GUA video that preceded it. Those are the only 2 topics. As usual, give it 5 to 7 days and then use the book's usual chapter ending review features like the key topics you find in the chapter or in the PDF form. Key terms, there's a flashcard app on the companion website. Maybe retake the Do I Know This Already chapter beginning quiz questions and that kind of thing. All right, so standard chapter ending review activities. And just advice from me, let me recap it here with the last line. Basically, there's an ad hoc lab for GUAs and an ad hoc lab for ULAs that are basically the same lab, but one for GUAs and one for ULAs. Can you do that? So what is the lab? It says, hey, I'm going to tell you the addresses to use. Can you configure them and then predict what prefixes should appear in the routing table? So can you look at these GUA and EULA addresses and predict their prefixes? So those are a couple of basic skills. And can you do that? Well, then I think you've pretty much mastered some of the big concepts here in this chapter. All right, last thing, if you want to find your way, just use this link or QR code to get back to the CCNA playlist here at the channel, and it lists all the videos, instructional review in order that makes sense to match up to the books. Hey, thanks for spending the time. If you're ready for the next topic, we're going to talk about neighbor discovery in the next teaching video. You can click on the left to get to that. But if you're ready for that ad hoc lab, click on the right and you go straight to that. Hey, thanks for spending the time, and I'll see you in the next video.